environment. Okay, so I've given you demand, I've given you supply, and so far this is very conventional, neo-Malthusian gloom and doom predictions. The question, sort of as Lenin, another great gloom and doomer, says, what is to be done? You have people like Bjorn Lomborg, the skeptical environmentalist we've probably heard of, the people who are criticizing the Al Gore film as just too doom and gloomy. Fair enough, they're saying, look, water's not that big an issue. There's more than enough water, it's just a question of how to manage it. And I agree. There's more than enough water, it's just a question of how to manage it. But that's sort of like saying, there's more than enough love in the world. It's just a question of how to manage it. There's more than enough money in the world. It's just a matter of, how you get it around to the poor people. There's more than enough power in the world. We got to manage it a little better than we have. And I think that's very true for water. And I want to bring that into how do we deal with the access issue? Because water has become a symbol of protest worldwide. It is risen up in the terms of awareness. It's now, on my way here, I went through a bookstore. Newsweek has it as a cover story, US News has it as a cover story, National Geographic has it as a cover story. There's an awareness that we've got a problem, that we need to do something about it. But what? And that boils down to many issues of what is water? Is it a public good? Is it a private commodity? And that duality is like, well, it's both. It's like telephones, like electricity, those are private things. The difference is that water, you can't live without it. You can live without oil, you can live without electricity. Water is somehow different, and it is. But it is also pretty much the last socialist monopoly on Earth. In places of hyper-capitalism, from Singapore to Fairfax County, Virginia, it is still more than likely run by the government. New Jersey aside, 85% of Americans get their water through a public utility. That becomes a natural monopoly because you've got pipes and you can't have 1,000 different pipes, right? Well, yes and no. The trust is at a historic low as well, and the trust is what holds society together. Class is another issue. There's some places that are wanting to buy back the control of water from RWE and keep it at the community level. There are more than less these sort of affluent hippie communities they can afford it. They've got the management skills. Most of the world can. Prices have risen everywhere, but they've risen faster and they've risen higher for people in rural areas and in the poor. In Indonesia, I think they pay 10 times what we do in America, if not more. And that continues to build this friction. Frank Luntz, a Republican pollster, was surprised to see these kind of values. He thought, well, local is better, private's local, private's better. And 75% of the respondents of his poll said no, it's a federal responsibility. And he says, told the then Republican House, it's hard to be believed, but I have been a professional pollster for 20 years, and I can tell you from personal experience that such an overwhelming consensus about the role of Washington, D.C. doesn't happen often, but it exists here. Bechtel, Suez, Thames, and RWE are now trying to sell off and back out of some of the contracts they got into from Bolivia to New Jersey to elsewhere. 4 years later, they found it's too difficult, it's too contentious, it's too complex. There's far more debt involved in what's going on, and they need to decentralize what their management is, which is not in their best interest. I think Alex put it very well. The elites don't like the idea of locals having these kinds of rights. They like to be able to control. It's one of the reasons why I don't think there will be wars between countries, but there will within countries, because it's too much of a risk for one country to go fight another because these are the elites against the elites. It's much better to let the instability at the base change. Which brings me to my own sort of suggestion of what is to be done. Unlike Lenin, I don't think necessarily that Marxism is a right approach to this. And it's going to sound like a compromise, but I do want to get into the issue of legality. 200, 300 years, 200 years ago, you had Jefferson writing that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are entitled to certain inalienable rights. We all know that. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. When it comes to the access of things that Americans value that are precious, we tend to inscribe that access in terms of fundamental, legal, inalienable rights. And that's a good thing. And it has proven a good thing over time. Religion, speech, assembly, freedom of expression, these are rights. And they're very powerful rights that we don't let go of once we have them in our grasp. But since none of these things, life, liberty, happiness, religion, expression, are possible if you're dying of thirst, one might think that somewhere in the Constitution, our founding fathers might have tucked in the inalienable right to water. Well, they didn't. We enjoy no such right. If RWE or some French company wanted to cut off your water, they could do so, and there wouldn't be a darn thing you could do about it. You could not file a lawsuit saying, I claim my right to water. They don't because they would lose money. Hence the reality that water in America is an economic commodity first, and a public good only second, third, fourth, or 17th. And interestingly, it has been since the birth of our country when Hamilton and Aaron Burr formed the Manhattan Water Company. That's a separate issue for Q&A at the period. The exceptions, as I found in my fellowship, were places like Botswana and South Africa. Late blooming democracies, very arid countries, they did make water a human right. They didn't specify what that right entails, or how much water was part of the right, or how it's supposed to be allocated, but to their credit, they made it a human right, and that has led to progressive changes and challenges and court issues in those countries. This is spread worldwide in the aftermath of clashes in Bolivia and overseas. You have greater and greater attention being focused again that water is a fundamental and inalienable human right. Every human being should be allocated the minimum amount necessary for hygiene and good nutrition, free of charge, to ensure that the poorest people on earth have enough water to live. Who could argue with that? This is like Jefferson in the 21st century. And UNESCO's, the UN, contended that signatories to the UN do have the moral obligation to consider water as a human right. There's no more issue that's so contentious and so threatening to governments, to companies. The World Water Forum in Mexico that just took place last year was split open by protests that hinged on this very issue. Why? The objections, well, doing so would carry certain legal obligations, guarantees under international treaties. So they ended up saying, well, water is a guarantee of life for the world's people. Yeah, we knew that. But is it a right? I don't think we need to choose between water as a private commodity versus water as an inalienable public right. I want to focus on that one word, inalienable. That's in a sense that it can't be separated from the person who possesses it. I actually believe that water is a fundamental, universal and defendable right, but it should be quantified and recognized as alienable. That is, it can be traded, it can be marketed, and it is a transferable right. It may sound radical or libertarian, and perhaps it is, but it's not that strange. In the American West, a lot of farmers, a lot of miners have alienable rights to water. It was based on allocation when it became a scarce commodity. They said, okay, I've got water rights. And in the last few decades, they've started to trade those water rights. You have T. Boone Pickens going around the country spending $50 million buying up some of these water rights from marginal agriculture and then selling them to golf courses, to developers, to cities. And oh, that T. Boone Pickens. Good for him. Good for him. He is allocating water to a far more efficient and productive use of water that is not being wasted. Maybe bad for some of the people that feel threatened who have been enjoying that, but they have benefited. They have sold their alien